Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, the Bay Area's premier author interview program. Today we're going to talk about a book called Bad Mother. But wait till you hear the subtitle. A chronicle of maternal crimes, minor calamities, and occasional moments of grace. And I dispute that. There are more than occasional moments of grace in this book. It is, of course, by Ayelet Waldman. Who else would write a book like that? Published by Doubleday. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's my great pleasure to be back.
I was looking at my notes about you, and I said, here's the woman who causes a stir on Oprah.
Mm-hmm.
It causes consternation among the readers of the New York Times. And
Yes.
as I read the book, also folks who catch you on Salon had some disagreement with you.
And don't forget my mother. My mother disagrees with me a lot, too.
But that's because you're her daughter. It's nothing to do with what you write.
Oh, don't be so sure.
Okay. But is the book, in that usual Waldman controversial mode?
I never try to be controversial. That's what's so silly is I never actually really know that what I'm saying is so controversial until it hits the page and I start getting feedback on it. The book is in some respects a kind of response to the whole brouhaha about my notorious article that landed me on Oprah 4 years ago, the one in which I said I love my husband more than my children.
Yay!
Yay. So the book is in a way a response to that. It's sort of, further thoughts on motherhood and on the way that we as a society get so tied up in knots about motherhood that every time we identify someone that we can consider sort of the bad mother du jour, all of our attention and energy is focused on that person. I think mostly as a way to make ourselves feel better.
Probably.
Absolutely. Like right now, John and Kate +8. Have you been watching? Have you probably
Some
were you
of
ever
that, yeah.
trapped on a JetBlue flight from coast to coast and you saw 7 of those episodes in a row?
Not yet, thank God.
Well, that happened to me. Sama. But right now that she's sort of our bad mother of the moment, because they have 8 children, and I guess she's bitchy and controlling, and whatever it is, she's the one that has been identified by today's bad mother SWAT team as the person we should all be yelling at. Despite the fact that my understanding is that it's her husband who had the affair, not her. But
yeah, and yesterday she went to the beach with the kids and not the husband. That was on AOL.
That was on AOL.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? We become obsessed with these figures, these sort of notorious, iconic bad mother figures. And for one, hiccup of a moment, I was the notorious, terrible bad mother that made everybody else feel better.
Well, and your response to that, of course, was to sit down and define what the bad mother might be.
Absolutely.
Which appears, of course, right on the front jacket.
Absolutely.
But when one looks inside, it's a little more developed. She lives only in the present and entirely for her kids. This is the good mother.
Right.
She has infinite patience. She remembers to serve fruit for breakfast, is always cheerful and never yells, manages not to project her own neuroses and inadequacies onto her children, is an active and beloved community volunteer, remembers to make play dates, her children's clothes fit, she does art projects with them and enjoys all their games. And, this is very important, she is never too tired for sex.
Now, you must know a lot of women like that, right? I mean, everybody, all of us, that's exactly who we are. I mean, that is actually the definition, in women's hearts of hearts, of what they think the good mother is. And that came from, me sampling all my friends and neighbors.
Yeah, that's right. This wasn't just out of your head.
No, I asked everybody. The consensus I just sort of asked everybody I knew, what is a good mother? And the consensus was basically Mary Poppins, but you don't have to pay her, and she never leaves.
Because one of the things that the good mother is supposed to be is a full-time mother, and being a wonderful person. You tried that.
Yes, I did.
Tried that.
I tried to go down that road. I quit my job. I went home and stayed with my kids for a couple of years, and And
you took a certain satisfaction in the fact that I was now the most important person in the day-to-day life of my child, but I was also bored and miserable.
Cataclysmically bored. I remember standing there on the playground, and I had this daughter who had infinite capacity for swinging, and I would just be sitting there swinging her and pushing her, slowly going crazy. And like pushing a swing, it turns out to be one of the few things you can't do while reading a book. And I would turn to the mommy next to me and I'd say, God, aren't you just bored out of your mind? And invariably, the woman would say, what are you? No, of course not. I have just perfected my homemade Play-Doh recipe. I'm as fulfilled as I ever could imagine being. And that made me feel like, well, I was the only one on the playground who was unfulfilled. But it turns out, that I wasn't, that there were many, many more of me than of her.
Lurking in the background, yeah. Perhaps ready to come forward if someone would say, hey, we're over here, let's try this.
I'm telling you, every single time I do a book signing, every woman in that line says they look at the title of the book, Bad Mother, and they make the same joke. Did you write that about me?
Bad Mother is, in my opinion, a great book because it actually tells you what your real job is if you're a mother. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Ayelet Waldman has joined us once again to talk about her latest book called Bad Mother, and I will proudly read the subtitle. A chronicle of maternal crimes, minor calamities, and occasional moments of grace.
Should I tell you what my friend Daniel, who inspired the book, wanted the subtitle to be? So the book was inspired because this friend of mine said to me, listen, stop complaining to me about all this nonsense. Just write a book already. So I wrote the book.
Already.
And the subtitle he wanted me to have for the book was, remember when Ayelet Waldman went on Oprah, but she had no book to plug? Remember? Well, now she does.
And she'll be right back, folks. Elizabeth Gilbert, that wonderful woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, which never goes away from bestseller lists.
Nope.
God bless her success. Says, this is not only a wonderfully written book, but I think it may also be a book of great salvation for many women. Most of the mothers I know, the honest ones, the tired ones, the confused ones, those are the ones we love, will see themselves reflected in these wise pages and will find long overdue comfort here. And they will. One of the things they're going to find is an understanding, according to you, of perhaps what all mothers need. All mothers need an identity separate from that of mother to my children. For you, the fact that writing was available to you because of your husband, in a way, his understanding that you needed this other identity. And he supported you from day one, even though he had been through one marriage that collapsed, partly due to literary competition.
And not only that, I gave a toast at our wedding where I stood up in front of all the assembled guests and I raised a champagne glass and I said, I hereby swear before you all that I will never become a writer. I will always have health insurance and I will always support my husband and never try to compete with him. And then, lo and behold, 2 years later, I'm trapped at home and I'm thinking, what is something that I can do here at home that could actually be a job? It was like I needed something in my life that my kids couldn't have access to. When you're a mother of small children, everything you have is theirs. They drink the foam off your latte.
That's right.
You have nothing that's your own. And I thought there were two things that I could think of that I could do that they would have no access to. And one of them was smoking cigarettes. And since I did not want to do that, I decided I had no choice but to write.
Was he the smoker right?
Exactly.
What a healthy choice.
Don't you? I think it was a very life-affirming decision, frankly.
You're an organic mother.
I am.
That's all there is to it. You're also a mother who knows something about a program, I guess one would call it, that I had never heard of. And I'm so glad you introduced me to it because I laughed like crazy. The program I'm referring to is attachment parenting.
Oh, yes.
A belief system, a kind of religion, said
Absolutely.
one commentator.
Absolutely. Attachment parenting, here in the Bay Area, there are lots of people who practice attachment parenting. And in other places like Park Slope in Brooklyn, there are lots of them in areas in Massachusetts. Here's the thing. I think the vast majority of people who practice attachment parenting are lovely, wonderful people who don't view it as a religion that they have to proselytize. There is, however, a sizable minority of attachment parenting people who believe that if you don't do it that they do, i.e. if you don't wear your baby on your body at all time, if you say, let your baby ride
for the whole first year of the baby's life,
exactly.
If you do anything less, it is child abuse.
Absolutely. I've actually had women tell me that the bottoms of your baby's feet should not touch the ground before the baby's a year old. I mean, it's lunacy. And you're supposed to sleep with your baby, and you're supposed to breastfeed your baby forever. And I actually, I will say this in my defense. I did breastfeed one baby till he was almost 3, not willingly. I would have stopped a lot earlier, but he was a very, he's even more stubborn than I am. But I'm always falling foul of the attachment parenting mothers. I'm always doing. I remember once standing in Walgreens, and so I'm standing there. I'm hugely pregnant. I'm holding a toddler, and I have 2 other kids running around, and I am buying swim diapers. You know those disposable diapers you put on your baby so that when they poop in the pool, the entire city doesn't need to be evacuated. And we were going on vacation, and this woman comes up and taps me on the shoulder, and she says, those are available in a non-disposable brand. And I looked at her, and I thought, and I said, because guess what I'm not going to do on my last vacation before this baby is born? Scrape out that non-disposable diaper after every visit to the pool. But, hey, if you want to come and do it for me, by all means. So, yeah.
She wasn't willing.
She was neither willing nor particularly pleased with my reproach. But the thing about living in Berkeley is that it gets kind of contagious. I mean, you start to become that kind of scolding, particularly around motherhood. I remember one of my kids had mercury poisoning as a result of eating too much tuna fish. And I remember standing one day in a grocery store and seeing this pregnant woman, putting cans of tuna in her cart and rushing up to her and launching into this whole sort of diatribe about tuna and mercury. And at one point I sort of look at her, and she's kind of inching away from me. And I thought, oh, now I'm one of them.
You are. That was a wonderful scene. And you admitted you're one of them.
Absolutely.
Okay. Does Bad Mother have anything to say about the kind of mother we all need? Of course it does. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
This is Jim Foster. It is Conversations on the Coast. One of my favorite guests, Ayelet Waldman, is with us to talk about Bad Mother, a chronicle of maternal crimes, minor calamities, and occasional moments of grace. And as I said before, the moments of grace, in my opinion, are more than occasional. For example, she says at one point in the book, she says, what is your job as a parent? Your job is not to be the parent you always imagined you'd be, the parent you always wished you had. Your job is to be the parent your child needs, given the particulars of his or her own life and nature.
Oh, thank God you reminded me of that.
That's a hell of a hard lesson to learn.
It is, and I completely forgot that lesson, and now I have to, go back and remember that.
That's a good one.
I wrote that?
Yes, you did.
Downright profound.
That's what it says. That's what
impressed.
Doubleday claims. Hopefully. All kidding aside, I want to get across the point that there are 1 million laughs in this book and 500,000 moments of reflection and really important thought about being a mother and being a parent. And one of them I want you to read now, and it's in the context of you're considering, after 4 kids, the possibility of one more child.
The real reason not to have another child is because when I think hard about it, when I get beyond the smell of a baby's head and the way it feels to take a bath with a newborn, I realize that I don't want to be there again, that none of the members of my family wants to be there again. As much as my husband sometimes misses having an infant in the house, he likes where we are right now. Meal times in our house are as raucous and boisterous as they always were, pitched at a volume that makes the children from small families who visit us quiver with anxiety. But now it's not because we need to shout over a colicky baby's screams. It's because every evening each of the 4 children has news to report, a perfect score on a spelling test that must be announced with false modesty, an injury, either physical or emotional, to recount with excruciating detail. They talk over each other, vying for attention, bickering over who goes first, and at the same time solicitously pouring milk and helping mop up one another's spills. Divided evenly into 2 sets of 2, the bigs and the littles, they engage in elaborate and protracted fantasy games. Abraham, the youngest, long ago graduated to the role of princess page or baby dragon instead of being shunted off as a piece of furniture or tossed out of the room altogether. Finally, he has evolved from playing a prop to being an almost equal partner.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
That is absolutely fantastic stuff. I'd like to go eat there someday.
Oh, you should. You should. Mealtime, it's about 7 minutes. That's how long it takes to, for everyone to eat, scream, tell all the details of their day, and leave the table. I keep saying that one day we are going to actually manage to sit at the dining room table for half an hour. That's about how long it takes us on a good day to make dinner, and I feel like the meal should last as long as the preparation. But we are so far away from ever getting there.
I don't think you'll ever get there because the next thing that'll happen is that some of these kids will be teenagers and they won't want to stay there that long because they'll have places they have to go.
We already have one. One of our teenagers has many, many places to go, but I think you can still force them to sit at the dining room table, don't you? Who am I kidding? For a little while.
Maybe you could extend it a minute.
As long as I'm the one who writes the checks, people have to sit at my table.
In this business, we have to time things.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to get a stopwatch.
Absolutely.
And say, hey, I'm only asking you for 2 minutes and 30 seconds and go
right,
quick,
exactly.
So that they, what do you mean 2 minutes is more than
I
that?
actually once had a piece of dinner that wasn't ready and we all sat down and ate, and I put something in the microwave and I put it on for 2.5 minutes. And when the bell went off, the meal had already been finished. And that last 2.5 minutes was what it took us to eat. And that last bowl of potatoes never got served.
Oh, dear. This is called wolfing it down.
Yeah.
This is what it's called. You were at the start of your relationship with her in a very bad, angry relationship with your mother-in-law, and that you were able to transform.
It wasn't so much bad and angry. It was that it was fraught, tense, jealous. I think I was jealous of the role she played in my husband's life. I was trying to assert my primacy. And over the years, it evolved. I don't think she ever played any. I think the psychodrama was all in my head, none in hers. But now she's one of my favorite people in the world. And in fact, when my husband travels, I'm always eager for her to come and stay with us. Not even to help out, although it's always nice to have another set of hands, but because she provides this kind of emotional ballast in our family. She's very even-tempered and easygoing, and I am neither. And it's nice for the kids to have her around.
Here's the way you end this book. Even if I'm setting myself up for failure, I think it's worth trying to be a mother who delights in who her children are in their knock-knock jokes and earnest questions. A mother who spends less time obsessing about what will happen or what has happened and more time in reveling in what is. A mother who doesn't fret over failings and slights, who realizes that her worries and anxieties are just thoughts, the continuous chattering and judgment of a too busy mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's obviously an ideal, and reading this book, Bad Mother, by Ayelet Waldman, is one way to get somewhere near that ideal. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.